Every afternoon at 2 p.m. sharp, he'd set up his chess board on the same park bench. The college kids called him Slow Old Man and laughed at his simple moves. They had no idea they were mocking a former CIA operative whose strategic mind had once prevented nuclear war. Welcome to Duty Stories. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden intelligence and unexpected wisdom, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe every elder deserves our respect, hit that subscribe button. These stories reveal more than you could ever imagine. Washington Square Park in Lower Manhattan was the kind of place where chess was religion. Every day, dozens of players gathered around stone tables, their games ranging from casual weekend matches to intense battles between seasoned masters. The park attracted all types: Wall Street executives on lunch breaks, college students skipping classes, retired teachers with time to kill, and hustlers looking to make a quick $20 from overconfident tourists. And then there was Walter Chen. At 72, Walter was a fixture at table 7, always arriving at exactly 2 p.m. with a worn leather case containing his chess set. The pieces were nothing special, plastic figures that had seen better days, with a few pawns that had been glued back together after countless games. But Walter treated them with the care of precious artifacts, setting up each piece with deliberate precision. The regular players knew Walter as a decent but unremarkable opponent. He played methodically, taking long pauses between moves, often staring at the board for minutes at a time. His style was conservative, defensive, focused more on avoiding mistakes than making brilliant attacks. "Walter's okay for practice," said Marcus, a chess teacher who ran a club for local high school students. "He's not going to surprise you with any fancy moves, but he's solid. Good for beginners to cut their teeth on." The college crowd was less charitable. A group of students from NYU had discovered the park the previous semester, and they treated the chess tables like their personal training ground. They were good players. Most had been on their high school chess teams. A few had even competed in regional tournaments. They also had the casual arrogance that came with being 20 years old and convinced they understood the world better than anyone over 30. "Look at Grandpa over there," laughed Tyler Morrison, a junior studying international relations. "Dude takes like 5 minutes per move. It's painful to watch." His friend Jake Peterson snickered. "I played him last week. Beat him in like 20 moves. I don't think he's ever heard of the Sicilian defense." "Maybe we should start a mercy rule," added Sarah Kim, the only girl in their group and easily the strongest player. "Put the old guys out of their misery before they embarrass themselves." Walter heard the comments, but said nothing. He'd learned long ago that young people needed to discover wisdom on their own timeline. At 72, he had patience for their arrogance in ways he'd never had patience for actual enemies during his 40-year career with the Central Intelligence Agency. Not that anyone in the park knew about his career. Walter's official biography was deliberately mundane. Retired accountant, widowed, 2 adult children who visited occasionally. He lived quietly in a rent-controlled apartment 6 blocks from the park, spent his mornings reading newspapers in 4 different languages, and his afternoons playing chess. What the chess players didn't know was that Walter Chen had spent 4 decades analyzing patterns, predicting behavior, and making strategic decisions under pressure that most people couldn't imagine. He'd run assets in Moscow during the Cold War, coordinated intelligence operations in Southeast Asia, and spent the final decade of his career in the agency's analysis division, where his specialty was game theory and strategic prediction. Chess, for Walter, wasn't a hobby. It was muscle memory. But he'd learned to hide his abilities, to play down to his opponent's expectations. It was safer that way. And after 40 years of keeping secrets, Walter found it easier to remain unremarkable. Until that Tuesday afternoon, when Tyler Morrison made the mistake of assuming that an old man's kindness was the same thing as weakness. Tyler had just finished demolishing a tourist from Ohio in 12 moves, and was feeling particularly confident when he spotted Walter setting up his pieces at table 7. "Hey, old man," Tyler called out, loud enough for his friends to hear. "You want to play a real game? I'll try to go easy on you." Walter looked up with the calm expression he'd perfected during decades of high-stakes negotiations. I'd be happy to play, young man. Though I should warn you, I sometimes get lucky. Tyler's friends gathered around as he sat down across from Walter. Don't worry, Grandpa. I'll make it quick so you can get home for your afternoon nap. Sarah pulled out her phone to record what she assumed would be an entertaining beatdown. Jake started a running commentary for her video. Okay, so we've got Tyler about to school this old dude who probably learned chess from a book published in 1950. Walter offered Tyler the choice of colors. Tyler chose white, naturally, wanting the advantage of the first move. Hope you're ready for this, Tyler said, moving his king's pawn 2 spaces forward, a classical opening that signaled his intention to control the center of the board aggressively. Walter responded by moving his own king's pawn forward 1 space, a simple, unassuming reply that Tyler interpreted as exactly what he'd expected from an old man playing not to lose. Classic grandpa chess, Jake whispered to Sarah's phone. No imagination. Tyler developed his knight to its optimal square, beginning the kind of textbook development he'd learned in chess club. Walter moved a pawn on the queen side, seemingly ignoring the center of the board entirely. Is he even trying? Sarah muttered. For the first 10 moves, the game proceeded exactly as Tyler had predicted. He controlled the center, developed his pieces aggressively, and began building an attack against Walter's king. Walter's responses seemed passive, reactive, focused entirely on defense. Tyler was so confident that he started playing faster, barely thinking through his moves. This was going to be embarrassing for the old man, but Tyler figured it would be a good lesson in humility. On move 11, Tyler pushed forward with his queen, setting up what he thought was an unstoppable attack. Checkmate in 3 moves, he announced smugly to his audience. Walter studied the position for exactly 30 seconds, not the long, agonizing pauses he usually took, but the precise, efficient analysis of someone who saw the entire game several moves ahead. Then he made a move that changed everything. A simple pawn advance that Tyler initially dismissed as inconsequential. But as Tyler reached for his queen to deliver what he thought was the killing blow, he stopped. His hand hovered over the piece as his mind raced through the implications of Walter's move. The old man had just set a trap so sophisticated that Tyler almost missed it entirely. If Tyler moved his queen as planned, Walter's next move would be a knight fork that would simultaneously attack Tyler's king and queen. Tyler would be forced to move his king, losing his queen in the process. What the hell? Tyler muttered, pulling his hand back. He studied the position more carefully, looking for another way to press his attack. But the more he analyzed, the more he realized that Walter's seemingly passive play had been anything but random. Every move had been precisely calculated to lure Tyler into overextending his position. You okay, man? Jake asked, noticing Tyler's sudden change in demeanor. Tyler didn't answer. He was too busy realizing that the old man had been playing him for move 1. Walter sat quietly, his hands folded in his lap, waiting with the infinite patience of someone who had once spent 6 months in a Moscow safe house, waiting for a double agent to make contact. Tyler tried a different approach, pulling back his queen and attempting to consolidate his position. But Walter's next move revealed the true depth of his strategy. A bishop's sacrifice that opened up lines of attack Tyler hadn't even considered. Suddenly, it was Tyler's king that was in danger, his pieces scattered and uncoordinated. This can't be happening, Tyler whispered. But it was. Move by move, Walter dismantled Tyler's position with the systematic precision of someone who had spent decades thinking several steps ahead of very dangerous people. The crowd around the table had grown. Other chess players had noticed the game, drawn by Tyler's obvious distress and Walter's calm efficiency. Sarah had stopped recording, too absorbed in watching what was clearly a masterclass in chess strategy. Jake's commentary had died in his throat. Who is this guy? Someone whispered. Walter's final combination was a thing of beauty. A series of 4 moves that forced Tyler's pieces into positions where they couldn't defend each other, culminating in a checkmate that Tyler saw coming 3 moves away, but was powerless to prevent. Mate in 3, Walter said quietly, the first words he'd spoken since the game began. Tyler stared at the board, his face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. How did you experience? Walter replied simply. Would you like to play another game? But Tyler was already standing up, his confidence shattered. I need to go. As Tyler walked away, Sarah approached the table. Mr. Chen, Walter replied. Walter Chen. Mr. Chen, that was incredible. Where did you learn to play like that? Walter was quiet for a moment, considering how much to reveal. I've been playing for a long time. You pick things up. That wasn't just experience, said Marcus, the chess teacher, who had been watching from a nearby table. That was world-class strategy. Have you ever competed professionally? Walter shook his head. No tournaments. Just practice. But Marcus wasn't buying it. He'd seen enough strong players to recognize when someone was operating at a level far beyond casual chess. The way Walter had controlled the game, the precision of his combinations, the calm efficiency of his endgame. This was the chess of someone who thought about strategy professionally. Are you a chess teacher? Marcus pressed. Retired accountant. Walter replied, giving his standard cover story. Over the following weeks, word spread through the chess community about the mysterious old man at Table 7. Players who had previously ignored Walter now sought him out, hoping to test their skills against someone who had clearly been hiding his abilities. Walter obliged them, but he was careful never to dominate too obviously. He won most of his games, but he made them competitive, educational rather than humiliating. He offered gentle advice, shared theoretical insights, and gradually became known as one of the park's strongest players. But he never revealed where his skills came from. Tyler, meanwhile, had been doing research. The humiliation of his defeat had stung, but it had also sparked his curiosity. Someone didn't develop that level of chess mastery without leaving some kind of trail. He started with the obvious searches, chess tournaments, master databases, anything that might mention a Walter Chen. Nothing. Then he tried a different approach. Tyler was studying international relations, and something about Walter's approach to the game had felt familiar. The systematic way he'd analyzed positions, the patient way he'd built his strategy, the precise execution of his plans. It reminded Tyler of case studies he'd read about intelligence operations. On a whim, Tyler searched for Walter Chen CIA in a database of declassified documents he had access to through his university. What he found made his blood run cold. A heavily redacted file from 1987 describing a joint intelligence operation in Southeast Asia. Most of the names had been blacked out, but one had been missed by the censors. Walter Chen, listed as Strategic Analysis Division, Deputy Chief. Tyler dug deeper. More files, more references to Chen's work in strategic planning, crisis analysis, and what one document called multivariate scenario prediction under extreme time pressure. Walter Chen wasn't a retired accountant. He was a former CIA analyst who had spent decades playing chess with international crises, where the wrong move could cost thousands of lives. The next afternoon, Tyler returned to the park. Walter was in his usual spot, setting up his pieces for another day of games. Mr. Chen, Tyler said, approaching the table with new respect. Could I speak with you for a moment? Walter looked up, and for just an instant, Tyler saw something flicker in the old man's eyes. The sharp, analytical gaze of someone who missed nothing and forgot less. Of course, young man. What's on your mind? Tyler sat down, his voice lower than usual. I did some research after our game last week. Walter's expression didn't change, but his hands stopped moving over the chess pieces. I found some interesting documents in my university's database. Declassified files from the 1980s. Your name came up. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Did it? Strategic Analysis Division. Deputy Chief. Ring any bells? Walter sighed softly, the sound of someone who had always known this moment would come eventually. What do you want, Tyler? I want to understand. That game last week, that wasn't just chess, was it? That was something else entirely. Walter looked around the park, at the other chess players focused on their games, at the normal life of a New York afternoon that he'd worked for 40 years to protect. Tyler, there are some conversations that are better left unhad. But I need to know. I'm studying international relations. I want to work in government someday. If you were really CIA. Were? Walter's smile was thin. You think service like that just ends when you get a retirement watch? Tyler leaned forward. What do you mean? Walter gestured to the chessboard. You see pieces on a board. I see patterns of behavior, strategic objectives, resource allocation under pressure. You see a game. I see a simulation of conflict resolution. So when you played me, I was reading you the same way I used to read Soviet negotiators. Your tells, your decision-making process under pressure, your response to unexpected complications. Chess was just the medium. Tyler felt a chill. You were analyzing me. I analyze everyone, Tyler. It's not something you turn off after 40 years. Walter picked up one of his chess pieces, the king, and turned it slowly in his fingers. Do you know what my job was during the Cuban Missile Crisis? Tyler shook his head. I was part of a 3-person team tasked with gaming out every possible Soviet response to our actions. We played out scenarios hour after hour, looking for the moves that would de-escalate instead of provoke. Walter's voice was quiet, but Tyler could hear the weight of memory in it. On October 26, 1962, we were 12 hours away from nuclear war. The Joint Chiefs wanted to launch airstrikes against Soviet missile sites in Cuba. They were certain it would end the crisis quickly. What happened? We ran the scenario. If we struck the missile sites, the Soviets would retaliate against our Jupiter missiles in Turkey. We'd be forced to respond, probably with nuclear weapons. Within 72 hours, major cities in both countries would be radioactive ruins. Walter set the king back on the board, so we recommended a different move. Ignore Khrushchev's public demands. Respond only to his private communications. Give him a way to save face while backing down. And it worked. You're here, aren't you? Tyler stared at Walter with new understanding. The chess game last week was me falling back on 4 decades of training. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you, but when someone challenges me, I respond the way I always have, by thinking several moves ahead and finding the path to victory that my opponent can't see. Why didn't you tell me? Why let everyone think you're just some harmless old man? Walter's laugh was bitter. Because harmless old men get to play chess in peace. Former CIA analysts get asked questions they can't answer about operations they can't discuss. Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing everything Walter had told him. Could you teach me? Teach you what? How to think like that. How to see patterns the way you do. How to analyze situations the way you analyzed that chess game. Walter studied Tyler's face, looking for signs of the arrogance and impatience he'd displayed the week before. Instead, he saw genuine curiosity and respect. It's not a game, Tyler. Strategic thinking at that level means accepting responsibility for consequences you can't always predict. Are you prepared for that weight? I think so. I want to serve my country the way you did. Walter was quiet for a long time, watching the other chess players around him. Finally, he began setting up the pieces for a new game. All right, but we do this properly. No more games for entertainment. If you want to learn strategic thinking, you need to understand that every decision has consequences, and every move reveals something about the person making it. Over the following months, Tyler's education began in earnest. What looked like casual chess games were actually lessons in crisis analysis, resource management, and psychological profiling. Walter taught Tyler to see patterns in seemingly random information, to recognize when someone was bluffing versus when they were genuinely committed to a course of action, and to understand that the best solutions often came from finding options that other people couldn't see. Intelligence work isn't about being smarter than everyone else, Walter explained during one of their sessions. It's about being patient enough to see the full picture while everyone else is reacting to fragments. Tyler's chess improved dramatically, but more importantly, his thinking evolved. He started approaching his international relations coursework differently, analyzing case studies with the systematic methodology Walter had taught him. His professors noticed the change. Your recent papers show a sophistication in strategic analysis that's quite impressive, Professor Anderson told him after class one day. "Have you been doing additional reading?" "Something like that," Tyler replied. 6 months after their first game, Tyler was accepted into a summer internship program at the State Department. The interview process had been grueling, but Tyler found himself drawing on lessons Walter had taught him about reading people, managing pressure, and thinking systematically about complex problems. "I got the internship," Tyler told Walter the day after receiving his acceptance letter. Walter smiled, the first genuine smile Tyler had seen from him. "Congratulations. You've earned it. I couldn't have done it without what you taught me. What I taught you was how to use what you already had. The potential was always there." Tyler hesitated, then asked the question that had been weighing on him for months. "Do you ever regret it? Spending your career in the shadows, never getting recognition for the work you did?" Walter considered the question while studying the chess position in front of them. "Tyler, in 1962, my analysis helped prevent nuclear war. In 1983, I identified intelligence that prevented a terrorist attack on American soil. In 1991, my strategic assessment helped end the Cold War 6 months earlier than anyone thought possible." He moved his knight, setting up a combination that Tyler was just beginning to recognize. "No one will ever know my name was associated with any of those events. No monuments, no medals, no mention in history books. But millions of people are alive today because of decisions made based on analysis I provided." Walter looked up at Tyler. "Do you think I need recognition for that kind of service?" Tyler shook his head, finally understanding. "Besides," Walter added with a slight smile, "I get to embarrass overconfident college students at chess. That's entertainment enough for any retirement." 2 years later, Tyler graduated summa cum laude and was accepted directly into the CIA's Analyst training program. His recommendation letter came from a professor who had been impressed by his exceptional strategic thinking abilities and sophisticated understanding of international relations. The professor had no idea that Tyler's real education had taken place at a chess table in Washington Square Park, under the guidance of a man whose contributions to American security would remain classified for decades to come. Walter continued his daily routine, 2 p.m. sharp at table 7, playing chess with anyone willing to sit across from him. But now, occasionally, he'd get a message on an encrypted phone that the agency still provided for certain retirees. "Need your thoughts on a situation developing in the South China Sea. Analysis requested on Russian troop movements near Ukraine. Crisis team requesting strategic assessment of Iranian nuclear negotiations." Walter would read the briefings, analyze the scenarios, and provide his recommendations the same way he always had, with systematic precision and deep understanding of human nature. Then he'd return to his chess games, carrying secrets that would never be revealed, playing a role that would never be acknowledged, serving his country in the only way he knew how. Some afternoons, Tyler would visit the park when he was home from Washington. They'd play chess and talk about current events, though Walter was always careful never to reveal anything classified. "Any advice for dealing with difficult personalities in government?" Tyler would ask. "Same as chess," Walter would reply. "Study their patterns, understand their motivations, and always think 3 moves ahead." On Tyler's last visit before his permanent assignment overseas, he asked Walter one final question. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd revealed your background earlier? If people had known who you really were?" Walter moved his queen into position for checkmate, a move Tyler saw coming but couldn't prevent. "Tyler, the most effective service often happens when no one knows it's happening at all. The moment people start watching you is the moment you become less effective." He gestured around the park at the chess players, dog walkers, and tourists enjoying a normal afternoon in New York. All of this, the freedom to play chess in a public park, to speak freely, to live without fear, exists because people you'll never hear about made sacrifices you'll never know about. And you're okay with that. Walter smiled as he reset the pieces for another game. "Tyler, I spent 40 years preventing disasters that never happened. How do you get recognition for a war that was never fought, a crisis that was never realized, a tragedy that was never allowed to unfold. He looked up as a group of new college students approached, clearly sizing up the old man for an easy chess victory. Besides, Walter added quietly, there are always more overconfident young people who need to learn respect for their elders. As Tyler walked away from the park that day, he understood that he'd been privileged to learn from one of the most effective intelligence officers in American history, a man whose greatest victory was that no one would ever know his name. And somewhere in Washington, Walter Chen's latest strategic assessment was helping prevent a crisis that the American people would never know had threatened them. Because sometimes the most important games are played by people no one remembers, on boards no one sees, with stakes no one realizes. So I ask you, have you ever encountered someone whose quiet wisdom changed your understanding of the world? Someone who taught you lessons they could never take credit for? Share their story in the comments, because here at Duty Stories, we believe the most important teachers often work in complete anonymity. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe to help us honor those who served in silence and continue serving in ways we'll never fully understand. Remember, the next time you meet someone who seems unremarkable, consider that they might be carrying knowledge that helps shape the world you live in. Until next time, treat every elder with the respect they deserve. You never know what history they've quietly helped write.